Tell me why Google come to you.
The idea was, can we test Street View? And I think it was more about exploring not just the technology, but the use of technology. Your website doesn't really work on other browsers. And he goes like, Steve Jobs has told us we don't really care. He only wanted the apple.com to work on Safari only, on the browser. Right? One of the central banks in Middle East, I met them 2 weeks ago, let's say. And I told them, listen, I think this is a problem, so you should not. And exactly 1 week later, they had the same problem. They called me right there and then they're like, can you just fly down? We need to talk to you guys.
Cororum, tell me why Google come to you.
So Google was doing an interesting project which is called Street View. At that point in time, there was no Google Maps concept, anything of that sort, but they had this Google Labs in which they were experimenting with different stuff. And they had this one project called Street View at that point in time. And they were working with a company, and their company was working with us on the testing. They were using us as testing company. So the idea was, can we test Street View, right? And it was slightly a funny experiment. Like you could enter the location and the Street View would take you through the location itself, but it will make you look as if you're running and you're listening to a song, right? That is how it was supposed to behave. So it was not just a view as such. It was also the entertainment part of it, that, okay, like you're listening to music, you can pick a music of your choice, and then you go through the Street View, So we were asked to test that project, and it was really a funny, interesting kind of a project that we did, because again, first, the technology was never really there in that sense, now we use maps and everything pretty commonly, right? That was just an experiment basically by Google. And it was fun, it made us think about, oh, you know what? Okay, this is something that's going to come up eventually, down the road, as an application for different things which Google was launching, So that was a fun experiment. Yes.
Wait, so like Google initially wanted to have music. Like if I'm on a Street View and I'm supposed to be able to listen to music and running.
You should be, yes, that was the original intent, that you could just sit on your computer, not be even on the street, but explore it while having the music on that you want to listen to, as if you are there, right? So kind of an immersive experience, I would say. But that was just, at that point in time, I'm not talking about like 10, 15, 12 years ago. That was just a fun experiment, And yeah, I mean, like that was, if I were to think back, it was definitely an immersive experience in a way that they were trying to create. And I think it was more about exploring not just the technology, but the use of technology and how we can make people slightly have fun at home with the use of technology itself.
Okay, so like quality assurance is the process that if Google or any company wanted to roll out a product or software, they do this first before I use it as a user.
Yeah, they have to. They should rather.
They should. But like, okay, how many people are not doing it?
A lot of people are not doing it. A lot of people. Like, I mean, I speak to customers, and some of the common things I hear is our developers are testing our application. We don't have a testing team. The CTO, CEO are testing the application. We have shipped it, but customers are coming back to us and they're saying it's not working because we really didn't test it properly. When you ask them what does it mean properly, it basically means one of those 3 things that I've told you above. So like, yes, I mean, it's happening pretty commonly. This is why, when somebody asked me this question, okay, what is going to come down the road? I was like, a lot of things haven't really changed in 15 years. I don't think they will ever change, So I'm not too scared about the future. I think what we haven't really learned from the past is also something that bothers me, because everybody's making the same mistake, it's almost like unbelievable that in this age, people still think that they can do this and can make their customers happy, like it doesn't work anymore like that.
Let's take Google as an example, right? Like after the test for the Street View, what did you find?
I mean, we found it to be working on only one browser, that was Chrome, because that's the only browser Google had, And I think that at that point in time, I went to Apple as well. So that's a funny story there. I went to the head of testing of Apple. I met him just somebody set me up with them, like go and talk to these guys. And I was like, okay, let me talk to the head of testing of Apple. I mean, I'm going to learn something from these guys, like it's good conversation. It's not all about business. It's just like, okay, what do I really hear from them? And I spoke to the guy, and he was telling me about the testing process and how they're doing testing and et cetera, et cetera. And I was like, listen, I think I have to tell you one thing. I'm sure you guys know that already, that your website doesn't really work on other browsers, And he goes like, yes, we know that. But Steve Jobs has told us we don't really care. He only wanted it to work, the apple.com to work on Safari only, on the browser, right? And that was kind of the context in which I figured that even Google was operating. That, okay, it's a Chrome experiment, it's our own thing, it should work on Chrome, it doesn't really matter. But now things are not the same, now your application needs to work on all the browsers, and everything needs to work on all the browsers, right? I mean, it's 12 years ago, 13 years ago, these are the stories that I'm telling you were true. And that was how these guys were looking at things differently versus how they see it now. Same organizations just behave very differently right now. So yeah, I mean, even Google tried to just make it work. So a lot of the issues that we found were specific to that browser. For example, we found that some of the street views were not really pulling up the data as they should. They was really slow. So the performance was a bottleneck that I remember that we found as a problem. And sometimes it would just not, I think probably because of memory oversaturation and all of that, it would crash, the browser would crash. So some of these things that, I remember that we found through that experience and through that experiment itself.
Isn't that crazy? Even Google has issues would be found, and then other companies thought they are okay by its own.
Yeah. And that is why every application, everything that you use, even if it's Apple, Microsoft, they want you to tell them if there is an issue, right? I mean, if the application, yes, report issue. Because even they understand that they cannot find all the issues in the application. So that is one way of them collecting information why things are not working, because applications are inherently complicated now. So think of it an application at different levels. So one is the software level, right, where you have everything that you see as a user. But then there is a middle layer, which is called a firmware level, right? And then you have the operating system layer. And then you also have the hardware layer itself, right? So I mean, your software is now going through from, let's say, level 4 to level 0 and then back in terms of information exchange, right? Somewhere in between, you may decide to upgrade your operating system, but you don't upgrade your firmware and you do not upgrade your application for that operating system. That will cause the application to break, basically, right? So that is one way of looking at a software. Now think of this software that, okay, everything is same here, but we have now this software sending information to this software and getting information from another software. So that is a problem too. It may get the information, but it may not be able to send the information to the next system because of something, right? Because a lot of this information that we see at the palm of our hands is now interconnected. Your health apps are connected not just to your bracelet that you wear for your tracking or your ring that you're wearing for the tracking. It could also be talking to your backend of the Google Fit as well. Maybe if you're connected to that, or if you have a weighing scale, a digital weighing scale, you want to get data in your health app from that device itself, and maybe there is an integration available, maybe there is no integration available, maybe there is no live sync of that information. So applications are also complicated in that sense, and they have become more and more complicated. Now, so there is a third level. Same application should work on Androids, all versions of the Android, all versions of iOS. Same application should have a web front. It should work on all the browsers. It should work on Microsoft. It should work on Windows or Mac OS. So software has become more complicated. And I think now the more we think about it, without getting it properly tested and releasing it out to users is absolutely a bad idea. And the reason is now people have a lot of options in terms of softwares. Now your software is not the only one that is available in the market, so people have choices. So if your application experience, whatever a user is supposed to get out of that as a feature set is not going to work out, they are not going to come back to your software.
What's the biggest catastrophe you have seen in the past 15 years? Literally on your table is like... I told you.
Yeah, no. So there were two catastrophes I remember. I can recall right now. So one is that one of the central banks in Middle East. I won't tell which central bank. I met them. Let's say 2 weeks ago. Let's say, and I spoke to them, and I was like, oh, this is what it is, and they were like, oh, these are our practices, and I was like, listen, these practices are not really that good, so it's gonna be a problem. And they were like, no, we are pretty settled, we are fine. And that was more on the side of the security posture that they had, And 1 week later, they get hacked. Okay? And they get hacked because the same posture which they thought was right was compromised already. And I happened to be in that meeting, and I told them, listen, I think this is a problem, so you should not do it. And I'm not saying that I knew it was going to come down that road, but it was just like my 6 months was like, oh, there is this problem that could happen. And exactly 1 week later, they had the same problem. They called me right there and then. They're like, can you just fly down? We need to talk to you guys. And it was so they gave us the work to then do the whole remedy part and all that. Similarly, there was another customer, again an enterprise, and so they had they had an application through which you can actually get a gate pass. And a lot of trucks would go through that process, so it was a lot of logistics that was happening. So a lot of critical movement was happening. And again, I think 1 month before we really got into this problem, we advised them that their application has some sort of performance bottlenecks, and it may cause someday to delay the whole thing. And they were like, we don't really worry about performance right now because it's not our priority. One fine morning, I was on the road and I saw this queue of trucks, and and I was like, okay. And I went all the way to the gate, and and then got in. And anyways, I went to the office, and I spoke to the guy over there for something that we were doing already with them. And I was like, listen, I saw this queue of trucks at the gate, and it's like all the way back, And he was like, yes, that system that you were talking about, it has choked because we issued too many gate passes, and it choked, and that's why you see that. So we need to fix it right now. So in testing, I've seen it a lot of times, to be honest. I mean, these are two stories that I can really easily recall right now. I'm sure there are other stories too, where we have advised people not to. I mean, I'm not saying every time it has been this way, but pretty much if we tell them that this is gonna go down south,
pretty much it's gonna go down south.
Go down south. Yeah, exactly. It's going down that road basically. So my 2 cents to typically my customers are, it is your right to listen to us or to not listen to us and to implement what we are saying, but we have to tell you.
Yeah.
Our job is to inform you, and whatever decision you make based on the information is absolutely your right.
Sounds like a lawyer.
Because I think you cannot force people. You see, every product manager, project manager, CEO, CTO, CIO, they are also thinking in their own context all the time, right? I mean, they have a very specific context. So if you talk to them on a Monday morning, their mindset is really busy about, okay, I need to get everything started, right? So a lot of the time, their decision making is not defined by the horizon of the potential problem. It's what is right now the biggest priority. What is it that I need to solve today? What is it that I need to be done with today? So it's a lot of that context that is being set up, which doesn't really make them see the picture that may come down the road. So I'm not necessarily saying it's a bad thing or it's something that they miss out on. I think it's just not taking in this information that, what, if something goes wrong, am I willing to pay the price for this, right? If you're willing to pay the price, that's fine. But if the price is really high, then you have to reorient, you have to reconfigure your schedules, your whatever your priorities are, and you have to redefine everything, So I think a lot of the time the problem is not making them aware or not seeing the potential fallout that can happen, So now we tell a lot of the customers, this will happen, so this will cause this delay, this much probably revenue down. They kind of understand that language much better now.
Imagine there's a CIO or CTO come to you, and then they got the information auditing from quality team. Then how do they have to do with the information? Because sometimes they don't know, right? Too overwhelmed.
Yeah. So I think the relationship between the typical relationship that I see between us and a customer is not that of like back and forth. It's more about how do we get the most from them in less time, and also then we sit down with them and make them see the bigger picture. And I have always found that if you make them see the bigger picture properly and you make them feel that, okay, this is how things should be and this is how we think the process should be, and we typically make it like bite-sized thing. We're like, okay, like if we do this step, then it will lead to this step, and this will happen, then we'll do this thing. They understand that matter. So it's just also about, can you make them listen to the same thing or read the same thing? Because to be honest, testing is a really boring thing. Like it's not that sexy. It's a lot of people will find it boring and they're like, what is this? Like I don't really care about that part. But the problem is, it is the most important thing as well. I mean, like I think a lot of the things in life which we found to be boring are really the good things. I mean, like we will always find junk food to be the most interesting food, right? And salad is always boring, of course. And the soups are always boring, But to be honest, I mean, this is what I've learned now, that we have to make them see from their lens the potential implication and then really break it down for them. Because again, too much information, too early information that they cannot comprehend is also useless. Like it's not something that's going to drive any value for anybody. So it needs to be very contextualized for them, and it needs to have some sort of timeline boundaries as well to it, right? We need to talk about, if we take this step today, 3 weeks from now, 5 weeks from now, you will see this change. That kind of setting the timeline boundary is also very critical in convincing them to take that plunge.
So the company come to you, you identify the now not gonna be, I wouldn't even say it's a problem, just the things you observed, and then you will hold their hands throughout the journey, and that is how they can imagine to work with you.
So typically this is how it works, that we will review their current processes, what they're doing right now, what are the challenges, what are the teams saying. We talk to their teams, what are the teams saying, because a lot of the time you hear from the frontline soldiers, what the situation is, and you hear a lot of that is not there as well. And once you understand and there is sometimes this disconnect I've seen between the top leadership, what do they expect versus what do they give to these people who are actually doing the work. I mean, I find it very surprising that some of the expectations that the founders, or the C-level or the executive teams have from the testing teams is pretty like difficult to manage. Because inherently what testing teams suffer is, any testing team mostly suffer with is lack of resources, like in terms of people, not having enough tools, not having the right tools, not having enough timelines. I mean, like sometimes the testing is basically sent at literally the last moment, and then I tell people this is more like firefighting. This is not like putting up the process in place and making sure that there is no fire. It's just like fire is already there. It's just like you need to stop it from spreading. In that way, there is always a disconnect that I've found to be there, right? And as we have to educate the executives as well, that like if you expect this, you need to be aware of this too, right? And a lot of the times then you have to see, okay, how can you help them be more efficient as testing unit or as a tech unit completely on their own, by bringing in some tools, by enabling them to have better processes, taking out some of the stuff from the process, maybe adding some stuff to the process, making better alignment between development teams, their release cycles, with the QA team release cycles, So all of that stuff needs to happen. And that's what we try to push for, because, like, it's not like putting like one person or 5 people is going to do the job. No, it doesn't really work like that. You have to look at different pieces, create small adjustments in each of those pieces, and then you see, okay, like this is how the wheel will move now.